This episode is sponsored by PAX, the gold standard in emergency response bags. So when you're working under pressure, you need kit to be both dependable, tough and intuitive, and that's exactly what you get with PAX. Every bag is handcrafted by expert tailors who understand the demands of post-op care, from the high-tech, skin-friendly and environmentally responsible materials to the cutting-edge welding process that reduces seams and makes cleaning easier. PAX absolutely puts performance first. They've partnered with 3M to make perfect reflective surfaces for better visibility, and bright grey interior makes finding kit effortless and fast even in low light. With over 200 designs, PAX bags are made to suit your role, your needs and your environment. And thanks to their modular system, many bags work seamlessly together no matter the setup. PAX doesn't chase trends, their designs stay consistent, so once you know one, you know them all. And if your bag ever takes a beating, their in-house repair team will bring it back to life. PAX are built to perform, made to last. Learn more at pax/bags.com or head to the show notes for further details.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.
Welcome back to the podcast. In this episode, we're going to do something slightly different. What we're actually going to do is we have recorded a couple of AI blogs, which were initially in written format and been translated into audio. But what I thought we'd do is really get the author on board just to really unpack the blogs, just some of the background of the blogs, just before you hear them in audio format. So just to give some context, some background and some history, and just to really frame the blogs before you hear the actual conversation, which is an AI summary of the actual blog itself. And the purpose of these recordings and indeed these episodes is to really bring the blogs to life so that they're easily accessible in audio format, but just really from a fantastic number of authors really, and also just to give some context around it. So I'm joined today by Sarah Spelsberg, who is the co-host of the World Extreme Medicine podcast with me, and she's here just to provide some context to the blog itself. So the first one, and the one we're going to look at this week, is Medicine and PTSD. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Owen.
It's great to have you with us, actually. Sarah, I just wanted to, just as a framer, because this is something different we're trying. We're just actually transposing the written word into the audio. And so this was originally designed as a blog, as a written blog. I wondered if you could just maybe just give us a bit of background as to why you wrote it and indeed who it was targeted for and what it's about.
And so, excellent question. I started out in search and rescue, and my leadership was excellent about making us debrief, regardless, like if it was a horrific trauma, if it was a mild trauma, we always had a debrief. So I've carried that with me into my career, and I actually credit that with why I'm still here 30 years later. But I had a particularly awful night in the emergency department, and it was strep throat season and flu season, and all these kids are coming in with the same complaints. We can't get anybody moved up to we were ground to a halt in the ER, as so many ERs all over the world, both in the UK and in the US and other places are. And so it was difficult to get throughput. And something about this kid just didn't feel right. Like everything was normal. I had nothing objective to point to. His neuro exam was normal. He had a little bit of a fever. He had a little bit of a sore throat. His strep test was negative, and it just didn't add up. It just didn't feel right. I couldn't justify why am I ordering these labs and why am I doing this, other than the fact that something doesn't feel right. We were particularly backlogged in the labs, and he and his mother grew quite impatient, and he actually was perking up a little bit and feeling better. And so at one point, mom said, I really want to take him home. We only live like a minute away. We'll come back if he gets worse. And it's like, that's not an unreasonable thing, right? Like we get asked that in the emergency department all the time. And he literally skipped over to the toy chest. So you think, I'm probably just overreacting. He's probably fine. So I acquiesced to the going home. And I kept bird dogging the labs and just trying to wait and see once we got them. And when we got him, his platelets were really low. His white count was really low. And I'm like, this kid has some sort of leukemia or something going on. I called the pediatrician, and they're like, he doesn't need to be in the ER. This is the place where he'll get sick. He should go see his pediatrician in the morning. Like all very reasonable things. Like nobody did anything wrong that day. And but something didn't feel right. So I thought if I can get him back here, I can force an admission and then at least he'll be monitored. So I'm calling and calling and calling. And next thing I know, one of the nurses runs up and says, "Your kid's in the lobby." I go running out to the lobby and he looked at me, his lips turned blue, and he said, "I don't feel well." And he was gone. And we work the code for an hour. The pediatrician comes and helps, and we can't get him back. Like he's gone. There's nothing is working. And after about an hour and a half, we called the code, and then it's just myself and another physician in the emergency department, and I have to walk into a room and be like, "Hi, what brings you into the emergency department today?" And I just want to lay down and cry. I want to lay down and scream. And I thought it was something I did wrong. And I spent like almost a year feeling like I missed something, I did something wrong, I, I, I messed up. And not until I ended up back in the ER, and just by chance, the medical examiner brought the report to me. And I was able to read it, and I realized there's nothing anybody could have done. But I had to get help. And so I don't want anybody to feel like they're alone in that. Like that could have destroyed my career if I'd let it, because I was in a really dark place about that. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I knew that I needed help. And so I just I just stopped and I just made sure I got it. And when I didn't like the sort of employee workforce free help, I paid for someone who specializes in PTSD, and it helped a lot. But when you feel like that, I wrote the blog because I want other people to know this happens to all of us. You're not alone. There's a way out.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we're just about to hear the blog actually, and it's fantastic, absolutely, and really insightful, very visceral account. But yeah, absolutely, super insightful. Just before we do hear the blog, just a couple of things. One is that the article really highlights the value, as you were saying, Sarah, of peer support and psychological first aid. Could I get you to speak to just yeah, just what meaningful peer support looks like, and also how we can foster it within the culture because it can be formulaic, it can be a structural service which is provided, but can it just also be like Sarah, you're not looking great, just take just do you want to grab a quick coffee and just talk about what's just happening? So it can be formal or informal, but could I get you to speak to what meaningful peer support looks like?
And that's actually exactly what happened. The first one was actually my sister because I had to go on a family vacation right after that, and I'm just a shell. I'm a ghost, and my sister is really astute, and she just right away was like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't even know how to speak about this." And so eventually we were, sitting on the beach together, and I told her what happened, and I'm just like, I don't know how I can't look to anything we could have done differently. Like, I don't know how we could have fixed this, but it's just devastating to lose a child. You just feel for the parents, you feel for their siblings, like why did this happen? And what could we have done differently? And so my sister was the first person who sat me down and made me feel seen and heard. And then when I got back to work, a colleague did say, like a colleague actually said exactly what you said. She said, "You don't look like yourself." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't feel like myself." And it was a really meaningful conversation because I sat down and I'm just like, what could we have done? Like how could we have not how could we have avoided this outcome? And she said, sometimes you can't. And then she told this story, a very similar story. And and it's not like a one up telling a story. It's a I'm telling this story so that you know that you're not alone. And so absolutely the peer support was monumentally valuable for me.
Listen, that's powerful. That's powerful. And like you said, even just transposing your feelings down into words is equally as powerful. So you're just about to hear the blog. It's a fascinating, insightful, very vulnerable and transparent record of what Sarah went through. And listen, we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do give us your feedback. And we'll also put links in the show notes to the actual blog and to the greater body of work that Sarah's put forward in blog format. So please do enjoy and join us next week for part 2. For Sarah's second blog.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going into something pretty intense, a really raw human story. It kind of pulls back the curtain on the emotional cost, the potential trauma even in emergency medicine. It's not just about the procedures, it's about the visceral side of being on those front lines. Our source for this is, it's a really powerful piece, excerpts from an article called Emergency Medicine and PTSD. It is okay to not be okay. It's by Dr. Sarah Spelsberg, and it was published on Medium back on December 1st, 2021. So our mission today is to really unpack this incredibly difficult experience that Dr. Spelsberg shares. We want to focus on that human impact, right? The hidden burdens that these healthcare professionals carry. And what makes this, I think, really compelling is how she describes the aftermath of losing a patient, especially a child, and then the immediate just chilling pressure to move right along. She calls it losing a precious, precious someone, a child. Just heart-wrenching. It's his child. They walked into the ER, low-grade fever, sore throat, hip pain. Seems almost routine, right?
Deceptively so, yeah.
And the ER was overrun. A rural setting, long wait. The child asked to go home, feels better for a bit, only to come back, turn blue, whisper, "I don't feel well," and then gone. Just like that. They tried a resuscitation for over an hour, failed. And you just imagine being the doctor there. She lists the questions haunting her. Was this avoidable? Was it my fault? Did I miss something?
The self-blame, yeah. Or blaming the system.
Exactly. Was it the system's fault? Lab delays, X-ray delays, how did we fail this kid? All of that rushing through her mind. And this is the part that really gets me. She had to walk directly into the next patient's room.
Yeah.
And ask, what brings you into the ER today? It's almost impossible to comprehend doing that.
That immediate pivot.
Yeah.
It's brutal. And, knowing a bit about Dr. Spelsberg makes it even more striking. She's known as RogueMed. She combines this love for wilderness, extreme medicine, emergency stuff with outdoor adventures.
Right, so she's clearly no stranger to intense situations.
Exactly. She's probably comfortable with high pressure, pushing limits. And yet, this experience, it shows how deeply something like this can affect anyone, even someone with that kind of background, that kind of resilience. It really just highlights the universal nature of trauma, I think.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how tough you are in other areas.
Yeah.
And that's really where the PTSD connection becomes so, so important. We often think of PTSD with combat veterans, which is valid, of course, but it absolutely impacts frontline healthcare workers. They face these intense, repeated traumatic events, often without resolution.
Right.
Dr. Spelsberg's reaction, you mentioned the aftermath, the physical reaction she had later, the vomiting, the self-questioning, that profound sense of failure. These aren't just grief, though grief is absolutely part of it. They can be indicators of acute stress. And if that's unsupported, if there's no space to process, it can absolutely escalate into chronic PTSD. Her story shows that immediate expectation, compartmentalize, move on. It's a cultural norm that, it really hinders the healthy processing you need to prevent those long-term effects.
So it's not just the awful event itself, but the lack of space.
Yeah.
The demand to not have space that really compounds the problem.
Precisely. Yeah. Her story isn't just personal grief. It holds up a mirror to that unwritten rule in medicine. Suck it up. Move on. And her bravery in saying, point blank, it is okay to not be okay, that becomes so fundamental. It challenges a culture that often mixes up vulnerability with weakness, right? And just perpetuates this silent burden of trauma. It makes you think maybe true strength for these frontline workers isn't about never breaking. Maybe it's about acknowledging human limits, seeking that support.
That really reframes it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pull back a bit then. This whole experience, losing the child, the questions, the immediate pressure to keep going. What does it all mean when we look at it together? We've walked through this gut-wrenching loss, the agonizing self-doubt, that chilling need to immediately see the next patient. And Dr. Spelsberg's physical stress response. I mean, being sick across the country, on the side of the road, on planes, it just shows how deep this stuff cuts.
It really does, viscerally.
But then there's that other part she mentions, relying on the kindness of strangers when she was completely falling apart.
Yeah.
There's a flicker of something else there, too.
Right. And if we connect that specific, really harrowing story to the bigger picture of PTSD, of emotional well-being in these high-stress jobs, it just begs the question, doesn't it? If someone like Dr. Spelsberg, highly trained, clearly resilient in many ways, has such an intense, debilitating reaction, what does that truly tell us about the human cost? The cost of working on these front lines day after day.
Yeah.
Her story really amplifies the messages from her own article. It is okay to not be okay. Simple but profound. And you are not weak. And maybe most importantly, you can overcome this with help. So for the bigger picture, it just underscores how vital it is to acknowledge vulnerability, to actually seek support. And this isn't just for doctors, right? It's for anyone facing that kind of immense pressure, loss, the weight of human suffering. It sort of challenges that whole idea that emotional strength means never breaking down. Maybe strength is in the breaking and in the asking for help to heal. That's where recovery starts.
So here's something to think about as you go about your day. Consider those profound emotional burdens, the ones carried, often silently, by people working in emergency medicine. How does understanding Dr. Spelsberg's very personal, very painful experience and the culture she's speaking out against maybe change how you perceive the individuals who are there for you in your moments of crisis?
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.
And so there we have it, the AI transcription or indeed summary of the blog post. And it was really just listening back myself actually, and also knowing Sarah as a colleague and friend. It's really difficult. I think a lot of emergency medicine is difficult because one thing that isn't necessarily on the paperwork or indeed on the ePCR electronic patient report form is gut feel. And when you just have a gut feel that something's not right with the patient, and it's super challenging because I think this is something we've really had to wake up to in pre-hospital care, is this element of, doing all the tests, but still sometimes just not being sure that everything is okay with the patient. And it's these outliers which can really shake us. And we really need to actually seek community around these. So we're doing more on the podcast now around MDTs, so multidisciplinary team working, just to share some of these really difficult decisions. And even when all the numbers are fine, everything appears fine on paper, but just something about the patient which you can't shake, and it's just sharing those decisions, but it's also sharing, like Sarah did with colleagues, that actually even if you do everything for the patient, sometimes there's still an adverse outcome. There's still a suboptimal outcome, even though everything was done for the patient. And I've certainly had to process these with colleagues as well. These outcomes where you do everything, you still feel this sense of guilt, and it's really good to share those reflections with others, so you're not carrying the guilt around with you. Okay, listen, I hope you do enjoy. We're going to share Sarah's second blog next week, and this would be a general theme of interviewing the author, hearing the blog summary in AI format, and then just a little reflection on the back end. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.